The green glass bottle tumbles against the main shore, catching morning light like a trapped emerald. Inside, yellowed paper bears coordinates and 5 words that will resurrect a 20-year-old mystery. We're alive. Find us. Please. Sarah. Chen's bare feet sink into the cold sand as she jogs along Pemaquid Beach, her breath forming silver clouds in the October air. The rhythmic crash of waves drowns out the weight pressing against her chest. Another sleepless night, another failed attempt to forget the anniversary. 20 years. 2 decades since Michael and Rebecca Hartwell sailed into a storm and never returned. She almost doesn't see it. The bottle rests against a piece of driftwood, its cork darkened with age. Sarah's pulse quickens as she kneels, her forensic training kicking in even before her heart catches up. Glass doesn't lie in the surf for 20 years without showing wear. Yet this specimen looks remarkably preserved. The paper inside bears water stains but remains legible. Her hands tremble as she works the cork free. The coordinates are written in blue ink, faded but clear. 44 degrees 28 minutes north, 68 degrees 17 minutes west. Below them, a date, September 15th, 1999. 20 years after the Hartwells disappeared. Sarah's throat constricts. She knows those waters. Every investigator in Maine knows them. The Devil's Triangle, a cluster of uninhabited islands 40 miles northeast of Bar Harbor, where currents collide and fog banks appear without warning. Where 3 vessels vanished in the past century, their crews never found. Where the Coast Guard called off the search for Michael and Rebecca after 6 days of finding nothing but debris from their 30-foot sloop. Morningstar. Sarah's phone buzzes against her hip. Detective Ray Kowalski's name flashes on the screen. Chen, where are you? We've got a situation. She stares at the bottle, her mind racing. Ray, I need to tell you something. I found, whatever it is, it can wait. We just pulled a body from Casco Bay. Maritime Unit thinks it's connected to that missing yacht from last month. The line goes dead. Sarah clutches the bottle against her chest, feeling the paper crinkle inside. The smart play would be to call this in immediately, follow protocol, let the Coast Guard handle it. But she's been chasing ghosts for 2 decades, and ghosts have a way of disappearing when too many people start looking. She thinks of Michael Hartwell's parents, how they aged 10 years in the first month after the disappearance. How Rebecca's sister Emma still calls every September 15th, voice hollow with the same question. Any news? Sarah pockets the bottle and turns toward her car. 20 minutes later, she's speeding down Route 1, her Subaru's engine straining against the October wind. The coordinates burn in her memory. She's plotted them twice on her phone's GPS, each time getting the same result. Coordinates pointing to the heart of the Devil's Triangle, specifically to Widow's Island, a jagged outcrop barely large enough to support a lighthouse, except there is no lighthouse on Widow's Island. Never has been. Her phone rings again. This time it's Emma Hartwell, now Emma Morrison, though she kept her maiden name for these calls. Sarah? I know it's early, but I had the dream again. The one where Becca is trying to tell me something. Sarah's grip tightens on the steering wheel. Emma's dreams have been uncannily accurate over the years, leading to the discovery of debris. That official search is missed. The Coast Guard dismissed it as coincidence, but Sarah learned long ago not to ignore patterns. What did she say this time? She kept pointing at something. A green light, flashing. And she looked older. Sarah. Like she'd been aging all these years. Emma's voice breaks. She looked scared. Sarah pulls into the parking lot of Pemaquid Harbor, her hands shaking as she kills the engine. Through the windshield, she can see the charter boats preparing for the day's tours. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a 20-year-old mystery might have just cracked open. Emma, I need you to stay calm. Can you meet me at the harbor in an hour? Why? What's happening? Sarah stares at the bottle on her passenger seat. The coordinates seem to pulse with possibility, with danger. She thinks of the Devil's Triangle, of the currents that have claimed so many vessels, of the fog that rolls in without warning and turns day to night in minutes. I think, she says slowly, your sister might still be trying to tell us something. The silence on the other end stretches long enough for Sarah to wonder if the call dropped. When Emma finally speaks, her voice carries a tremor of desperate hope. You found something, didn't you? Sarah closes her eyes, knowing that her next words will set events in motion that she can't control. That 20 years of grief and questions, are about to collide with whatever truth waits at those coordinates. Emma, how quickly can you get to a boat? Emma Morrison arrives at the harbor like a woman possessed, her Honda Civic's tires squealing against the gravel parking lot. Sarah watches through the marina office window as Emma stumbles out, her auburn hair whipping in the salt wind. 20 years have carved lines around her green eyes, the same eyes her sister Rebecca had. But right now she looks 17 again, desperate and alive with possibility. Show me, Emma says, bursting through the office door without preamble. Sarah glances around the cramped space, noting the harbor master's empty coffee cup and the weather radio crackling with morning reports. She pulls the bottle from her jacket, watching Emma's face transform as she recognizes the implications. Jesus Christ. Emma's voice barely registers above a whisper. This is really from them. I don't know. Sarah sets the bottle on the scarred wooden desk. But the coordinates are specific. And the date, 20 years after they disappeared. Emma reaches for the bottle with trembling fingers, then pulls back as if it might burn her. What if it's some sick joke? What if someone's been watching us all these years, waiting to Emma? Sarah's voice cuts through the spiral of panic. Look at the ink. Look at the paper degradation. This has been in salt water for months, maybe years. No one could fake that aging process without sophisticated equipment. Emma sinks into a folding chair, her hands pressed against her temples. The Devil's Triangle. God, Sarah, you know what that place is like. The currents alone, I've chartered a boat. Sarah's announcement hangs between them like a challenge. Captain Marcus Webb. He knows those waters better than anyone still willing to go out there. Through the window, they can see Webb's 40-foot fishing vessel, Second Chance, bobbing at the end of the pier. The captain himself emerges from the wheelhouse, a weathered man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and the careful movements of someone who's survived too many storms to Emma's laugh. Carries no humor. Webb won't take us. Not to Widow's Island. His brother was one of the fishermen who disappeared out there in '92. He'll take us. Sarah's certainty surprises even herself. I told him we found new evidence about the Hartwells. He knew Michael. They used to race together before Mike bought the Morning Star. The weather radio crackles with an update. Small craft advisory remains in effect for waters beyond 10 nautical miles. Fog banks developing along the outer islands with visibility dropping to less than 50 yards. Emma stands abruptly, pacing to the window. Her reflection wavers in the salt-stained glass as she stares out at the gray horizon. What if we find them, Sarah? What if they're actually alive out there, and we're 20 years too late to save them? The question hits Sarah like a physical blow. She spent 2 decades as a forensic investigator, learning to compartmentalize hope, to deal in evidence rather than wishes. But Emma's words force her to confront the scenario she's been avoiding. What if the coordinates lead to survivors who needed rescue 20 years ago? Then we'll deal with that when we find them. Sarah's voice sounds steadier than she feels. But Emma, you need to understand. The chances they're still alive are, I know the odds. Emma turns from the window, her face set with determination. But Becca's been in my dreams for 20 years. Every September 15th, like clockwork. And last night was different. She wasn't just scared, she was urgent. Like time was running out. Sarah studies Emma's face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands shake slightly. The anniversary dreams have been getting stronger, more vivid. Emma's therapist calls it anniversary syndrome, the mind's way of processing unresolved trauma. But Sarah has learned not to dismiss Emma's intuition that a knock on the office door interrupts her thoughts. Captain Webb steps inside, his yellow rain slicker dripping seawater onto the linoleum floor. His pale blue eyes assess both women with the practiced gaze of someone who's learned to read people as carefully as weather patterns. Ladies, his voice carries the gravelly texture of 40 years smoking cigarettes and breathing salt air. Sarah tells me you've got coordinates for the triangle. Emma shoots Sarah a look of surprise. You told him? Marcus deserves to know what he's signing up for. Sarah hands Webb the bottle. These coordinates point to Widow's Island. The message is dated 20 years after the Hartwells disappeared. Webb's face doesn't change as he examines the bottle, but Sarah catches the slight tightening around his eyes. He's thinking of his brother Danny, she realizes. Thinking of the empty boat they found drifting 3 miles from Widow's Island, its engine still running. Emma, Sarah calls out. Have you heard this song before? Emma turns, her face flushed with excitement and fear. Becca hummed it sometimes, when she was nervous or thinking hard. She said it reminded her of something from childhood, but she could never remember what. The green light grows brighter as they approach, revealing itself to be not a single source, but multiple lights arranged in a pattern. As the fog parts momentarily, Sarah gasps. Ahead of them, perhaps 200 yards away, rises a structure that has no business existing in these waters. A lighthouse. Not the modern, utilitarian towers that the main coast, but something from another era entirely. Victorian in its elaborate architecture, with ornate ironwork and stained glass windows that glow with that eerie green light. The music box melody seems to emanate from its upper floors, carried by speakers hidden somewhere in the structure. That's not on any chart, Webb says, his voice tight with disbelief. I've been sailing these waters for 40 years, and there's never been a lighthouse there. Sarah checks the depth finder. The display shows impossible readings, sometimes 20 feet, sometimes 200, as if the seafloor itself can't decide where it wants to be. The GPS coordinates flicker between their current position and the ones from the bottle, as if reality is struggling to maintain consistency. Emma rushes back to the cabin, her eyes wide. Sarah, I remember now. The lighthouse, it was in Becca's paintings. She used to sketch it over and over, especially toward the end before they left for their sailing trip. She said it came to her in dreams. What paintings? Sarah has never heard of Rebecca Hartwell being an artist. She started painting the last few months before the disappearance. Said she felt compelled to capture something before it was too late. Mom threw them all away after the funeral. Emma's voice cracks. Said they were too painful to keep. Webb cuts the engine as they drift closer to the lighthouse. The structure seems to pulse with its own heartbeat, the green lights brightening and dimming in sequence. Through the stained glass windows, Sarah can make out shadowy figures moving inside, too indistinct to identify, but unmistakably human. We need to get closer, Emma says, moving toward the bow rail. No, Webb's voice cuts through the music like a blade. We're already too close. Look at your compass. Sarah glances down at the boat's compass and feels her stomach drop. The needle isn't just spinning, it's moving in perfect time with the lighthouse's pulsing lights, as if some magnetic field is synchronizing them. Captain, we didn't come this far to turn back now, Sarah argues. But even as she speaks, she notices something else disturbing. The water around the lighthouse isn't the same color as the surrounding sea. It's darker, almost black, and perfectly calm despite the swells that rock the second chance. Emma suddenly grabs Sarah's arm. There's someone on the lighthouse gallery. Someone's waving at us. Sarah follows Emma's gaze to the circular walkway around the lighthouse's lamp room. A figure in white stands at the railing, arms moving in what could be a greeting or a warning. The distance and fog make identification impossible, but something about the figure's posture seems familiar. The music box melody reaches a crescendo, then stops abruptly. In the sudden silence, they can hear something else, voices calling across the water, faint and distorted, but unmistakably human. Help us, the voices seem to say. We're trapped. Help us. Webb's hand slams down on the engine controls, gunning the motor to full reverse. We're leaving. Now. Wait. Emma lunges for the controls, but Webb blocks her with his body. Listen to me. Webb growls, his pale eyes fierce. That lighthouse shouldn't exist. The water around it defies physics. And if we get caught in whatever field is affecting our instruments, we might never find our way out. As the second chance pulls away, the fog begins to thicken again, slowly obscuring the impossible lighthouse. But just before it disappears entirely, Sarah sees something that makes her blood run cold. Another figure has joined the first on the lighthouse gallery. This one is gesturing frantically, and even through the distance and mist, Sarah can make out long, dark hair streaming in the wind. Hair the exact same color as Emma's. Turn around. Emma screams, clawing at Webb's arm as he maintains reverse thrust. That's Rebecca on the lighthouse. I saw her hair, her build. It's my sister. The second chance continues backing away from the impossible structure, but the fog seems reluctant to release them. Tendrils of mist wrap around the boat like grasping fingers, and Sarah notices their wake isn't following the normal physics of water displacement. Instead of a straight line, Their path curves and loops as if some current beneath the surface is redirecting their movement. Look at the GPS, Webb shouts over the engine noise. We're not moving. Sarah stares at the display in disbelief. Despite the engine running at full reverse, their position remains static relative to the lighthouse. The coordinates flicker between readings, sometimes showing them miles away, sometimes indicating they're inside the structure itself. Emma breaks free from Webb's restraining arm and rushes to the stern rail. The lighthouse is still visible through the fog, its green lights pulsing with hypnotic regularity. The figure with dark hair continues to wave from the gallery, movements becoming more frantic. She's in distress. Emma calls back to them. Can't you see? She needs help. Sarah joins Emma at the rail, studying the distant figure through a pair of binoculars Webb keeps in the cabin. The magnification reveals details that make her skin crawl. The woman on the lighthouse gallery is indeed dark-haired and wearing white, but her movements are too fluid, too perfect. She waves with mechanical precision, the same gesture repeated endlessly without variation, like a music box figurine. Emma, that's not your sister. Sarah's voice barely carries over the wind. Look at how she moves. No one waves like that. But Emma isn't listening. She's found the emergency flare gun in the cabin's safety kit and is aiming it toward the lighthouse. I'm signaling them. Let them know we're here. No. Webb lunges for the flare gun, but Emma fires before he can reach her. The red flare arcs through the fog, illuminating the mist in crimson light. For a moment, the scene takes on an otherworldly beauty. The Victorian lighthouse surrounded by swirling fog, the dark water reflecting the flare's dying light. Then the flare strikes the lighthouse's upper gallery and something impossible happens. The structure flickers. Like a television with poor reception, the lighthouse wavers between solid and translucent. In that moment of instability, Sarah catches a glimpse of what lies beneath the illusion. Twisted metal and broken glass, the remains of some structure that's been underwater for decades. The green lights aren't coming from stained glass windows, but from something organic, pulsing with bioluminescent energy. The music box melody returns, louder now and discordant. The notes clash against each other, creating harmonics that seem to vibrate through the boat's hull and into their bones. Webb clutches his head, blood trickling from his nose. It's getting in our heads, he gasps. Whatever's down there, it's using sound too. His words cut off as his eyes roll back, and he collapses against the helm. Sarah catches Webb before he can fall, feeling his pulse flutter weakly against her fingers. Emma stares in horror as their captain's breathing becomes shallow and irregular. What's happening to him? Emma demands. Sarah doesn't answer immediately. She's too busy studying the water around them, noticing how the black circle surrounding the lighthouse is expanding. The boundary between normal seawater and whatever unnatural medium surrounds the structure is creeping closer to the second chance. We're being pulled in, Sarah realizes. The whole area is some kind of trap. She helps Webb to a sitting position and checks the boat's controls. The engine is still running at full reverse, but their position relative to the lighthouse continues to shift, not toward it, but around it, as if they're caught in a slow spiral. Emma grabs the radio microphone. Mayday, mayday. This is the vessel Second Chance requesting immediate assistance. We are. She stares at the GPS display, which now shows their position as constantly changing. We don't know where we are. Static answers her call. Sarah takes the microphone and tries different emergency frequencies, but every channel produces the same result. White noise that occasionally resolves into fragments of voices speaking languages she doesn't recognize. Some of the transmissions sound decades old, complete with the audio quality of ancient radio equipment. The lighthouse is affecting all electronic signals, Sarah concludes. We're completely cut off. Webb stirs, his pale eyes focusing with effort. How long was I out? Maybe 2 minutes, Sarah says, helping him to his feet. What do you remember? Music, Webb mumbles, steadying himself against the helm. But not just the melody. There were voices underneath it, calling names, giving coordinates, asking for help. He looks toward the lighthouse, now noticeably closer despite their continued reverse thrust. It's a recording. Everything we're hearing, it's pieces of the last transmissions from boats that got caught in this thing. Emma's face goes white. You mean Michael and Rebecca's final radio call might be? Among others, Webb confirms grimly. This thing's been operating for decades, maybe longer. Collecting vessels, collecting people. He points to the lighthouse gallery where multiple figures now stand at the railing. All of them wave with the same mechanical precision, their white clothing billowing in a wind that doesn't seem to affect the fog around them. Sarah counts at least 6 figures now, all with different builds and hair colors. One appears to be wearing a Coast Guard uniform. Another is small enough to be a child. How do we get out? Emma asks, her voice small and frightened. Webb studies the instruments, his weathered face grim. I don't know if we can. The electromagnetic field is too strong, and it's growing stronger. Another hour, and our engine won't be able to overcome the pull. The lighthouse pulses brighter, and suddenly the water around them erupts in phosphorescent light. Shapes move beneath the surface, large, graceful forms that might once have been boats, but now seem to swim through the water like living things. Sarah catches glimpses of familiar silhouettes. A lobster boat, a pleasure craft, what looks like a Coast Guard cutter, all of them moving in the same slow spiral around the lighthouse, trapped in an eternal maritime dance. Emma grabs Sarah's arm, her nails digging through the fabric. The bottle, she says urgently. The message wasn't asking for rescue. It was a warning. Sarah pulls the bottle from her jacket, reading the coordinates again with new understanding. Not a plea for help, but a trap baited with hope. The coordinates don't mark where the Hartwells can be found. They mark where others will be caught. We're alive, Sarah reads aloud. Find us, please. She looks up at Emma, the horrible truth settling between them. It's not their message at all. It's the lighthouse calling to new victims. The music box melody swells to a crescendo, and in its notes, Sarah finally hears what Webb described. Fragments of final transmissions from boats that came seeking rescue and found only imprisonment, including, unmistakably, Michael Hartwell's voice calling, Rebecca, I can see a light ahead. We're going to make it. Michael Hartwell's voice echoes across 20 years through the lighthouse's malevolent broadcast, and Emma collapses against the cabin wall as if physically struck. Sarah catches her before she can fall, feeling Emma's body shake with silent sobs that seem to tear her apart from the inside. They never made it home, Emma whispers. They've been trapped here all this time. Webb works frantically at the helm, trying combinations of throttle and steering that might break them free from whatever force holds the second chance. The engine strains against the invisible current, black smoke pouring from the exhaust, but their spiral around the lighthouse only tightens. Sarah studies the impossible structure through the binoculars, counting the figures on the gallery. 8. Now, all maintaining their mechanical waves. But as she adjusts the focus, she notices something that makes her blood freeze. The figures aren't just waving, they're pointing. All of them gesture toward the same spot on the lighthouse's base, where a door stands slightly ajar, revealing darkness beyond. It wants us to come inside, she realizes. Like hell, Webb grunts, slamming the throttle to full forward. The boat lurches against whatever force constrains it, metal groaning under the strain. For a moment, they seem to break free, moving, perhaps 50 yards away from the lighthouse before the invisible current reasserts its grip. Emma suddenly straightens, wiping tears from her face. Wait, the dreams weren't just about the music box. Becca kept showing me something else. She rummages through her purse, pulling out a small silver compass, an antique piece with an ornate design. This was our grandfather's. He used it during the war when he served on convoy duty. Becca always said it was different from modern compasses. She holds up the antique instrument, and Sarah sees immediately what makes it special. Unlike the boat's electronic compass, which spins uselessly, the old compass needle points steadily in one direction, not magnetic north, but toward a heading that would take them away from the lighthouse. It's not affected by the electromagnetic field, Webb says, studying the compass with new hope. Probably because it uses a different type of magnetism, older materials. Grandfather used to say it never failed him, even when other instruments went crazy during storms. Emma clutches the compass like a lifeline. Can you follow it? Webb takes the compass, his experienced eye reading the bearing. 320 degrees. That'll take us northwest, toward deeper water. He adjusts their heading, fighting the invisible current. But we'll have to punch through whatever's holding us here, and I don't know if the engine can handle the strain. The lighthouse seems to sense their escape attempt. The green lights pulse faster, and the music box melody becomes urgent, almost angry. The figures on the gallery multiply. Sarah counts 12 now, then 15, as if the structure is summoning every soul it's ever claimed to witness their potential freedom. Look at the water. Emma points to the dark circle surrounding the lighthouse. The boundary is contracting, trying to keep them within its influence. But following the antique compass, they're moving toward a section where the normal blue-gray seawater meets the unnatural darkness. Webb pushes the engine beyond its limits. The second chance vibrates violently as metal and physics war against supernatural forces. Steam begins rising from the engine compartment, and warning lights flash across the instrument panel. She won't take much more of this. Webb shouts over the mechanical screaming. They're 20 yards from the boundary when the lighthouse makes its final gambit. The music stops abruptly, replaced by human voices, dozens of them, calling names. Across the water, Sarah hears Michael Hartwell again, and a woman who might be Rebecca. But there are others too. Children crying for their mothers, Coast Guard personnel giving their last coordinates, fishermen praying in languages both familiar and foreign. Emma covers her ears, but the voices seem to bypass normal hearing, resonating directly in their minds. Sarah, they're all the people who've been taken. They're begging us to stay, to join them. Don't listen, Webb growls, his knuckles white on the wheel. It's how the thing feeds. On hope, on the need to help others. The moment you give in to that voice telling you to turn back, you're trapped forever. The boundary looms ahead, a visible line where dark water meets natural sea. Beyond it, Sarah can see normal swells, natural foam patterns, the kind of ocean that follows physical laws. But as they approach the line, resistance increases exponentially. The boat's forward progress slows to inches. We're not going to make it, Webb says through gritted teeth. That's when Emma does something that will haunt Sarah's dreams for years to come. She pulls the emergency axe from its bracket and moves toward the stern. Emma, what are you doing? The boat's too heavy, Emma says, her voice eerily calm. If we're going to break free, we need to shed weight. She begins smashing equipment boxes, throwing anything loose overboard. Spare fuel containers, fishing gear, even the life jackets, everything that isn't essential to their escape. The life jackets, Emma. We need those. We need to get out of here more. Emma's eyes have taken on the same mechanical quality as the figures on the lighthouse gallery. The voices are right, Sarah. We should stay. Becca's here. Michael's here. Everyone who's been looking for them. Sarah realizes with horror that Emma is succumbing to the lighthouse's influence. The same force that creates the mechanical figures on the gallery is taking hold of her friend's mind. Webb, she's being affected. The captain abandons the helm and grabs Emma before she can throw herself overboard. As he restrains her, the boat loses what little forward momentum it had maintained. They begin drifting backward toward the lighthouse and its waiting embrace. Fight it, Emma. Sarah takes control of the wheel, following the antique compass bearing. Remember why we came here. Remember that Rebecca's dreams were trying to warn you, not trap you. Emma struggles against Webb's grip, her movements becoming increasingly erratic. You don't understand. They're not dead, Sarah. They're preserved. Safe. The lighthouse protects them from time, from pain, from loss. By turning them into puppets, Webb snarls. Look at yourself, girl. You're talking like one of them already. The engine gives a mechanical shriek and dies that in the sudden quiet. The lighthouse's influence becomes overwhelming. The voices of the trapped souls reach a crescendo, all of them pleading for the newcomers to accept their fate, to join the eternal vigil on the gallery. Sarah stares at the antique compass in her hand, its needle still pointing steadily toward freedom. She makes a decision that will either save them all or damn them to join the lighthouse's collection. She grabs the emergency flare gun and aims it not at the lighthouse, but at their own fuel tank. If we can't escape, she says, then we'll make sure no one else gets trapped here either. Sarah, no. Webb lunges for the flare gun, but Sarah steps back, keeping the weapon trained on the fuel tank. The emergency fuel containers Emma threw overboard bob in the dark water around them, creating a slick that reflects the lighthouse's green glow like an oil painting of hell. Think about what you're doing, Webb pleads. You'll kill us all. Better than spending eternity as puppets in that thing's collection. Sarah's voice remains steady despite the chaos around them. Emma has stopped struggling against Webb's grip. Her eyes now completely vacant, focused on the lighthouse with the same mechanical attention as the figures on its gallery. Through the binoculars, Sarah watches in horror as the helicopter touches down on what looks like a solid landing pad. Coast Guard personnel begin exiting the aircraft, moving with the same mechanical precision she's seen before. But these aren't illusions. These are real people being affected by the creature's influence. They're being taken, she realizes. It's not just creating false images anymore. It's controlling living people. Webb guns the engine, pushing through the dying flames toward the helicopter. We have to get them out of there before they're completely converted. The fake Coast Guard station pulses with the familiar green light, and Sarah can see more figures appearing on its decks, all wearing modern uniforms, all waving with that horrible mechanical precision. The creature has learned from decades of encounters, adapting its tactics to be more convincing with each iteration. Emma points to the water around the false station. Look at the depth readings on their equipment. The helicopter's emergency beacon is still active, broadcasting its position. But according to the readings Sarah can make out through the binoculars, the aircraft is sitting on solid ground in the middle of water that should be 300 feet deep. It's creating a temporary island, Webb says grimly, raising part of itself above the surface to support the helicopter. But the moment those people are fully under its control, he doesn't finish the sentence, but Sarah understands. The creature will sink back into the depths, taking the helicopter and its crew to join the collection of vessels embedded in its body. They're 50 yards from the false station when Emma suddenly stands up, her eyes fixed on one of the figures. On the deck. That's her, she whispers. That's Rebecca. Sarah follows Emma's gaze and sees a woman in white standing at the station's railing. She has Emma's auburn hair and green eyes, but her movements carry the same mechanical quality as all the other figures. Not Rebecca Hartwell, but the creature's interpretation of her, constructed from memories stolen from Michael's mind 20 years ago. Emma, it's not her. Sarah grabs her friend's arm, feeling how Emma trembles with the effort of fighting the creature's influence. Your sister is gone. She's been gone for 20 years. But she looks so real, Emma says, tears streaming down her face. And she's pointing at something, just like in my dreams. The false Rebecca is indeed pointing, but not at Emma. She's gesturing toward the helicopter where the Real Coast Guard crew moves with increasing stiffness. They're human while being slowly replaced by the creature's commands. She's trying to warn us about the crew, Sarah realizes. Whatever trace of the real Rebecca exists in that thing, she's fighting to save people. Webb brings the second chance alongside the creature's false platform. Up close, Sarah can see the horrible detail of the illusion, modern equipment that looks perfectly authentic until you notice how it's all grown rather than manufactured, formed from the same organic material as the creature's body. One of the Coast Guard personnel turns toward them. His name tag reads Peterson, and his eyes still hold a flicker of human awareness. Help, he mouths silently, his voice lost to whatever force controls his body. Can't move properly. Sarah grabs the boat's air horn and sounds 3 long blasts, the maritime distress signal. The loud noise seems to disrupt whatever field the creature uses to control minds. Several of the Coast Guard personnel stumble, their mechanical movements faltering. Everyone back to the helicopter. Sarah shouts through the boat's loudspeaker. This platform is not real. You're standing on a living creature. Peterson manages to break free first, stumbling toward the helicopter. As he moves, Sarah sees the platform begin to ripple beneath his feet like water disturbed by wind. The creature is losing its ability to maintain the solid illusion. But as the Real Coast Guard crew regains control of their minds, the false figures on the platform become more aggressive. The fake Rebecca suddenly lunges toward Emma, reaching across the water between the boat and the platform with arms that stretch impossibly long. Emma doesn't retreat. Instead, she reaches back, grasping the false Rebecca's hand in her own. Thank you for trying to warn people, Emma whispers. But it's time to let go. It's time to rest. The moment their hands touch, the entire platform shudders. The false Rebecca's face flickers between the mechanical mask and something that might have been human once. A brief glimpse of the real woman trapped somewhere in the creature's memory. Find the music box. The figure whispers in Rebecca's actual voice. Find the real one. It's the key to freeing everyone. Then the platform begins to collapse. The false Coast Guard platform crumbles like sand as Emma releases the dissolving hand of the Rebecca construct. The real helicopter tilts dangerously as its landing surface gives way, rotors spinning frantically as the pilot fights to regain lift. Peterson and his crew scramble aboard just as the aircraft rises from the collapsing illusion. "Get clear," Webb shouts, gunning the Second Chance's engine as chunks of organic material splash into the water around them. The creature's death throws send shockwaves through the surrounding sea, and the electromagnetic interference that has plagued their instruments begins to fluctuate wildly. Through the radio, they hear the helicopter pilot. "What the hell was that thing? Our instruments are going crazy up here." "Unknown biological entity," Sarah broadcasts back. "Suggest you maintain distance and call for backup. This area needs to be quarantined." But even as she speaks, Sarah knows the creature isn't dying, it's transforming again. The bioluminescent glow beneath the water shifts from green to deep blue, and the chaotic electromagnetic pulses begin to organize into a new pattern. Something far more sophisticated than the crude lighthouse illusion. Emma stares at the churning water where the platform collapsed. She said to find the real music box, the key to freeing everyone. She turns to Sarah with desperate urgency. What if some part of the real Rebecca and Michael are still alive down there? What if the creature doesn't just steal vessels? What if it preserves consciousness somehow? Webb checks the antique compass, which now points steadily toward deeper water. "If we're getting out of here, we need to go now. Whatever that thing is planning next, I don't want to be around for it." The water erupts 50 yards away as something massive breaches the surface. Not the lighthouse this time, but a perfect replica of the Morning Star, Michael and Rebecca's original sailing vessel. The 30-foot sloop looks exactly as it did 20 years ago, down to the blue and white paint scheme and the distinctive sail configuration Sarah remembers from the Coast Guard photos. "No," Emma breathes. "That's impossible." But as they watch, two figures emerge from the yacht's cabin. A tall man with dark hair and a woman with auburn locks, both wearing the same clothes they had on the day they disappeared. They wave normally. At first, not the mechanical gestures of the lighthouse constructs, but natural human movements filled with relief and joy. "Emma," the Rebecca figure calls across the water. "Thank God you found us. We've been trapped on this island for 20 years. Emma grabs the boat's radio. "Becca, is that really you?" "Of course it's me. Who else would it be?" The figure's voice carries across the water with perfect clarity, no distortion from wind or distance. "The compass led us to shelter when the storm hit, but we couldn't find our way out until we heard your radio transmissions." Sarah studies the scene through binoculars, noting details that make her skin crawl. The Morning Star shows no signs of 20 years at sea. No corrosion, no weathering, no marine growth. The figures of Michael and Rebecca look exactly as they did in 1979, not aged by 2 decades of survival. "Emma, look at them," Sarah says quietly. They haven't aged a day. But Emma is already grabbing life preservers, preparing to go to them. Maybe the island protected them somehow. Maybe time moves differently here. "Emma, stop." Webb's voice cuts through her excitement. "Look at their yacht. Look at how it sits in the water." Sarah adjusts the binoculars' focus and sees what Webb noticed. The Morning Star isn't floating. It's being held up by something beneath it. Dark tentacles support the hull like a living dry dock, keeping the vessel perfectly level despite the surrounding swells. The false Michael notices their hesitation. "What's wrong? Don't you want to see us?" His voice has taken on a different quality, still recognizably Michael's, but with an underlying harmonic that sounds like whale song. The same frequency they heard when the lighthouse creature was active. "We know what you are," Sarah calls across the water. "You're not Michael. And Rebecca, you're echoes of them, preserved by that thing." The figures on the yacht stop waving. Their expressions don't change, but their movements become subtly mechanical. "Of course we're real," Rebecca says. "Emma, don't listen to her. Come to us. We have so much to tell you about the island." Emma turns to Sarah, tears streaming down her face. What if there's some truth in it? What if part of them survived? Before Sarah can answer, the Coast Guard helicopter passes overhead, its crew broadcasting on emergency frequencies. "All vessels in the area, This is Rescue 7. We're tracking multiple radar contacts around these coordinates. Possible debris field from unknown wreck. The false Rebecca suddenly clutches her chest, doubling over in apparent pain. The music box, she gasps. It's fighting the control. Emma, you have to find the real music box. It's the only thing keeping our memories separate from the creatures. Influence. Michael moves to support her, but his movements are becoming increasingly stiff. The box is in the real wreck. Below us. The creature preserved everything, but it can't access the music box because it was blessed. Blessed? Emma leans forward. What do you mean blessed? Our grandmother's music box. The false Rebecca continues, her voice fading. The one that played Claire de Lune. She had it blessed by Father Morrison before she gave it to me. Said it would protect our family from evil. Sarah remembers Emma mentioning that their grandfather's compass was different from modern instruments. What if the family had a history of dealing with supernatural threats? The false Michael's movements become completely mechanical. Find the box. Break the creature's hold on our memories. Give us peace. Then both figures collapse, their forms beginning to dissolve like the platform before them. The fake morning star sinks beneath the waves, leaving only churning water and the lingering scent of ozone. Emma grabs Sarah's arm with desperate strength. We have to dive for the real wreck. If the music box can disrupt the creature's control, in 300 feet of water? Webb looks at her as if she's lost her mind. Even if we had proper diving equipment, which we don't, the electromagnetic field down there would kill us. But Sarah is staring at the antique compass, which has begun behaving strangely. Instead of pointing toward deeper water, it's now indicating a bearing that changes every few seconds, as if something below is moving in a specific pattern. It's not just pointing to magnetic north, she realizes. It's tracking something metal, something that moves. Emma follows her gaze. The real morning star. It's still down there, and something aboard it is calling to the compass. The water around them begins to glow again, but this time the light is different, warmer, more golden than the creature's usual bioluminescence. And from somewhere far below, barely audible over the wind and waves, comes the sound of a music box playing. Claire de Lune. But this melody isn't distorted or mechanical. It carries the pure, clear notes of a real music box. And in its song, Sarah hears something the creature's recordings never captured: hope. The real Rebecca is still down there, Emma says with absolute certainty. And she's been fighting that thing for 20 years. The golden light intensifies beneath the second chance, and Sarah watches in amazement as the water itself begins to change. The unnatural darkness that surrounded the creature's influence recedes, replaced by the normal blue-gray of Maine coastal waters. Through the clear depths, she can make out the ghostly outline of a vessel resting on the seafloor. Look at the depth finder, Webb says, his voice filled with wonder. It's reading 30 feet, not 300. Emma grabs Sarah's hand. The music box is bringing the real wreck to the surface. Becca's been fighting all these years to break free. The morning star emerges slowly from the depths, not carried by monstrous tentacles, but rising under its own supernatural buoyancy. 20 years of ocean exposure have taken their toll. The hull shows extensive corrosion, the rigging hangs in tatters, and marine growth covers every surface. But the vessel is unmistakably real, bearing the authentic scars of time and weathered days. The yacht breaks the surface, the music box melody becomes crystal clear. It emanates from the cabin, where a soft golden glow indicates the source of the illumination. But there are no figures on deck, no mechanical waves or false signs of life. Emma, Sarah says gently, you know they're not alive down there. I know. Emma's voice is steady now, filled with a strange peace. But their spirits have been trapped, used to lure others to the same fate. If we can retrieve the music box, maybe we can finally let them rest. Webb maneuvers the second chance alongside the ghostly yacht. The contrast between the two vessels is stark, one maintained by human care, the other preserved by supernatural forces that defy natural decay. Sarah can see into the morning star's cabin through gaps in the corroded hull, where something glints with golden light. The Coast Guard helicopter circles overhead, its crew broadcasting continuous warnings to keep other vessels away from the area. But the electromagnetic interference has ceased entirely, and their radio equipment functions normally again. Emma climbs carefully onto the Morning Star's deck, testing each step on the corroded surface. Sarah follows, noting how the yacht feels solid despite its deteriorated appearance. The supernatural force that raised it from the depths maintains just enough structural integrity to support their weight. In the cabin, they find the source of the golden light, a small silver music box sitting on what was once the navigation table. Despite 20 years underwater, it shows no signs of corrosion. The lid is open, revealing a tiny dancing figure that turns in perfect time to the melody of Claire de Lune. But they also find something else. Two figures lie peacefully on the cabin's berths, perfectly preserved but unmistakably deceased. Michael and Rebecca Hartwell appear to be sleeping, their faces calm and untroubled. They're wearing the same clothes from the Coast Guard photos, but their bodies show no signs of trauma or struggle. They drowned, Sarah says softly, reading the scene with her forensic training. Probably during the storm, when the yacht was swamped. But the music box. She trails off, studying the impossible preservation. Emma kneels beside her sister's body, tears flowing freely. She looks peaceful. They both do. As if responding to Emma's presence, Rebecca's eyes flutter open. Not with life, but with something deeper, a consciousness that exists beyond physical death. Her lips move, forming words with no breath behind them. Emma, the whisper comes from everywhere and nowhere. Thank you for not giving up. Michael's spirit speaks as well, his voice joining Rebecca's in ethereal harmony. The creature feeds on the memories of the lost, using them to trap others. But grandmother's music box preserved our true selves, kept us separate from its influence. We've been fighting it, Rebecca's spirit continues. Every time it used our images to lure rescue boats, we tried to warn them. But we weren't strong enough until you came. Emma reaches for the music box, lifting it carefully from the table. The moment her fingers touch the silver surface, the entire yacht begins to glow with golden light. The supernatural preservation fails, and 20 years of decay accelerates. In seconds, but the music box continues to play, its melody pure and unwavering. Take it to the surface, Michael's spirit says as his physical form begins to dissolve. The creature isn't destroyed, but the music box will protect others from its influence. Play the melody whenever ships go missing in these waters. We love you, Rebecca whispers to Emma as her own form fades. And we're finally free to go home. The Morning Star sinks gracefully beneath the waves, carrying its ghostly cargo to final rest. But the music box continues to play in Emma's hands, its golden light creating a protective barrier around the second chance. Webb starts the engine, and this time it responds normally. The antique compass points steadily toward shore, guiding them away from the deep waters where the creature still lurks in the darkness below. As they head for home, Emma broadcasts one final message on the emergency frequency. This is Emma Morrison. The search for Michael and Rebecca Hartwell is officially over. They have been found and laid to rest. The coordinates in this area should be marked as hazardous to navigation due to unusual electromagnetic phenomena. 3 hours later, they reach Pemaquid Harbor as the sun sets behind them. The music box has finally stopped playing, its melody complete. Emma holds it close to her chest, a tangible connection to the sister she's mourned for 20 years. What will you tell the authorities? Webb asks as they dock. Sarah helps tie off the mooring lines, considering the question. The truth would sound insane. A biological entity that creates false lighthouses to trap vessels, spirits preserved by a blessed music box, electromagnetic anomalies that defy physics. But sometimes the truth is less important than the warning. I'll recommend the area be marked for hazardous navigation, she says. Electromagnetic interference, dangerous currents, whatever explanation keeps people away. She looks at Emma, who nods in agreement. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. A month later, the Coast Guard issues a formal notice to mariners declaring the waters around Widow's Island off-limits due to unpredictable electromagnetic phenomena that interfere with navigation equipment. The official report mentions the recovery of debris from the sailing vessel Morning Star, confirming the deaths of Michael and Rebecca Hartwell in 1979. Emma keeps the music box on her mantelpiece, where it sits silent most days. But every September 15th, the anniversary of her sister's disappearance, she winds it carefully and lets it play Claire de Lune, while she lights a candle for the souls who found their way home, and in the deep waters beyond Widow's Island. Something ancient and hungry continues to wait in the darkness. But now, when it tries to use the memories of Michael and Rebecca Hartwell to lure new victims, it finds only silence where their voices once were. Some ghosts, once properly laid to rest, refuse to be disturbed again. The music box sees to that.